Enjoy yourself. Look at all the little ones. Their Sunday dress. You have your Bible, turn to Luke chapter 1. Luke chapter 1. So we're beginning our series on Advent. And so a lot of people don't know what Advent's really about. A lot of people just kind of align it to the Catholic denomination. But Advent is more than that, especially as we go into the Christmas season leading up to Christmas. What Advent means is it's a preparation, or it means arrival, or the coming into place. And so why we do Advent here at Beachside is because what I want us to do is remember what Jesus has done, but also look forward to the fact that he will come again. And that's the point of Advent. And a lot of times as we navigate through Advent, we talk about the fact that Jesus is here, or he has come, and that he has given his life as a sacrificial lamb for us. But oftentimes we don't look to the future. And I think when we look at Advent celebration, and most of the time they'll have candles up here. I don't trust myself with fire. I'll end up probably walking into it, burning that Christmas tree up, and then we don't have any type of water management in here, and this place would just burn. But as we look at it, I think what's beautiful is normally the first candle represents hope. And I think we have a wrong definition of hope. So like in the English, what we often do is like, I hope, and it's hope for future plans. So we can navigate through that together as a church. You can have conversations like, I hope that my husband will get home from work on time today. It's what my wife often says. And I tell her, stop hoping for that. You're just going to live in a state of disappointment, right? Or I hope my kids will behave today, right? We have these, I hope that when I go to Orlando at 5 o'clock, I won't hit rush hour traffic. But there's this idea of hope, right, that we have. And a lot of times it's more of, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that takes place. There's no confidence in it. Biblical hope is way different. And as we navigate through this, it's not just hoping that something will happen. It's believing, it's expecting, and it's putting your hope in the promise maker. And so it's saying, I expect God to do what he says he's going to do. I expect great things from God. Being certain that God will do what he says he will do. It is not just crossing your fingers. It's knowing the promise maker. So as we go into this story in first century, what we see is it actually has a lot of parallels with our culture today. So in first century, they hadn't heard from God in over 400 years. There was a spiritual deadness in the culture. They had shifted really to a legalistic type of Judaism where they had no faith in God anymore. It was, we have to earn our salvation. And the oppression by the Roman government on the Jewish people was overbearing. And what had taken place is the Jewish people had lost hope. They had lost hope of the 300 to 500 prophecies of the Messiah in the Old Testament. They didn't think it was going to happen. They stopped thinking about it. They stopped praying for the Messiah to come. It was really a spiritually dead season in the Jewish faith. And you see that when Christ comes, they're not ready for him. And so here in our modern day culture, what I honestly believe, there's a ton of parallels. I think oftentimes, especially when I talk to people, they've lost hope in God. They've lost hope in the 66 books. They've lost hope that God will truly forgive them. They lost hope that Jesus will truly return. Listen, I have been in seasons where I've laid in bed at night and I've just pleaded with God to come. And sometimes it's just feels like it's hitting a brass ceiling where it's just like, do you even hear me? In those moments, like as a pastor, where you show up to a hospital and there's an 11-year-old that's just incredibly ill and the pain won't go away. The doctors don't know what to do, or little babies that are in NIC ICU and you visit them and it's just like, God, like, what's going on? Or you turn on the news and you see that like the world seems like it's burning down, right? Morality is non-existent anymore. And so you just sit there and you're like, God, what's going on? When I look at what's taking place in first century, and I'm going to use an illustration that ties in beautifully with hope, I think many of them had lost their hope. So here's a story that I think will help you understand biblical hope. In 1914, there was an explorer, Ernest Shackleton, and he decided to board a ship called the Endurance, and he had a pretty large crew, and they wanted to kind of navigate and explore Antarctica, which I don't know why you would ever want to do something like that, but there they are on a boat. And as they began to go on a boat, what took place is they began to navigate through it. But what happened is the ice began to kind of form around the boat. And they found themselves in a really precarious situation where the icebergs had packed in up on the boat. And it began to completely compress the vessel. And for months, they were hoping that the boat could break free, but it began to sink. And so they took everything they had on board and they began to live literally on this iceberg. They pulled off the emergency boat and they began to have tents on these icebergs. But what they said as after they were rescued was the most eerie thing about this whole experience was the silence. You would hear, literally, it felt like the ice was cracking underneath the tent, and there was this eerie silence in the wind. Well, the commander of the ship decided, hey, we're going to die here. No one's coming to get us. They have no idea where we're at. So Ernest decides to take the safety boat and pushes off to sail with a few other men that accompanied him. And they went on an 800-mile journey seeking help. With no maps, with no compasses, with no idea of where this iceberg would potentially float to. And it became so cold for these men, the clothing on their body began to freeze to them. But when he left, they held on to these words, "Hold on, don't quit, I will come back for you." For months they waited. For months they drifted on this iceberg. And then months later, Ernest shows up. And every single man was rescued. And years after, one of the sailors was being interviewed. And they asked, how did you possibly not lose hope? And they go, we never lost hope because of this. We never lost trust in Shackleton's words. We knew his character. Oftentimes, and this is where biblical hope collapses, oftentimes we forget who we're placing our hope in and what. Like, biblical hope is not wishful thinking that God is going to do something he says he would do. He's never once in the history of humanity negated on his promise. It's his character. It's not wishful thinking that it will all work out. No, we hope because we know the character of the one who made the promise. That his son will return. That he will raise the saints from the dead, and those who are still alive, who walk with Jesus and have surrendered their life, will meet him in the air. That is a promise. It's not wishful thinking, crossing our fingers. And so we come into this story, and let me lay the groundwork for it. For thousands of years, God's people waited for this Messiah. For thousands of years. And these dark, oppressive empires, they suffered. No, oftentimes was silence, not hearing from God for hundreds of years. But they trusted that the Savior would eventually come. For decades, they waited for this promise to be fulfilled. It sounds familiar. They would read their Old Testament and they would see these promises that Jesus would be like the Son of Righteousness will rise. But we come to this story, and let me just give a background of it. For 400 years, God has not spoken through a prophet. 400 years. Malachi was the last prophet. And so they've been waiting. No prophet, no revelation from God for 400 years. And this in the intertestamental periods between the Old and New Testament. 400 years is known as the silent era. God is nowhere to be found. All the meanwhile, as we look at culture, Israel has sunk deeper into deeper oppression by the Roman government, and there was no light. They became so self-righteous, and there was no sun, and the hope of this promise began to wither. And this promise was this. In Genesis chapter 3, it goes all the way back to the beginning. When sin entered the world and everything fell apart, God tells Adam and Eve, from your seed, there'll be a son, and he'll crush the head of the serpent. Think about that promise. All of Satan's tactics, all of the evil, he's going to kill it. And they waited. And then Abraham comes on the scene. And he gets old and he has his wife Sarah. From your seed, the hope of the nations will come, right? And your seeds will be like the sand on an ocean shore. It'll be so numerous you can't even count. And he gets old and he begins to question God. Like, for real? Look at my wife. She's an old geezer over here. You're not looking so good yourself, Abraham, right? And they began to question, and they have this idea. Well, let's have a child another way. Didn't work out well for him. Then you come to David, and he promises your house and your kingdom shall endure forever. Your throne shall be established forever. And the kingdom's fractured. And it all seems to be falling apart. Isaiah 7:14 prophesies the Messiah will be born of a virgin. Well, how does that happen, right? Micah 5:2 prophesies he will be born in Bethlehem. Deuteronomy 18 says the Messiah will be a greater prophet than Moses. And if you have read the book of Exodus, Moses is pretty incredible. He will be a greater priest than Melchizedek in Psalm 110:4 and Hebrews 5. Isaiah 53 says he's going to be the suffering servant who bears the sins of his people. And promise after promise through the Old Testament as they read it, when is this going to happen? How much longer, God, do we need to wait? Generation after generation has passed. Where's God? And we come into Luke chapter 1, and there's just a small remnant left that really believe, that really have hope, that God's promises are true. And so this is what Advent is about, restoring hope to the hopeless. So you have a situation in life, and this is where I pray that God works in you this morning. It just feels like you've been pleading with God for years, and it just says, well, what's the point anymore? There's no point. I'm done praying about it. God's not going to show up in this. But as we look at Advent, through love, joy, peace, and hope, what we'll see as we look through this, that God shows up in the darkest places, the most obscure places. And it's just like the story of Bethlehem, right? A dark night, cold, shepherds who are kind of worthless. Hope burst in the sky that night. Glory arrives, wrapped in the form of a baby, and darkness and hopelessness are gone, and God shows up. And so here we come into this moment where God uses in this story a couple of people, an aging priest, a barren woman, an obscure village, and he takes this story of Advent and hope in places where it seems like hope has died. And so today, if you're in a posture where it feels like hope's died, I want to encourage you with the story that God's not done. Okay? Your marriage, your kids, some type of illness, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, God has a plan. And maybe that plan is heaven. Maybe that plan's restoration. Maybe that plan is just wait and let me do what only I can do. So when it happens, you can sit back and be like, wow, God. Wow. So let's get into this story. We come into this story where Luke ties in the Old and New Testament. And let me walk you through this really quick. Prophecy-wise, as we look at the Old Testament, there's prophetic proclamations in the book of Isaiah and Malachi that there would be a forerunner before Christ. You get that? Someone will come and from the wilderness, Isaiah says, and proclaim, hey, the Messiah is here. You need to listen. He's here. They would proclaim almost like the Antichrist in Revelation, hey, this is the end of times. There was a sign that would be given to the Jewish people, hey, the Messiah is here. And that person was John the Baptist, if you know anything about your Bible. And so as we look at Luke chapter 1, John the Baptist is about to be conceived. It's beautiful. And so this forerunner takes place. And so verse 5, it says this, in the days of Herod, king of Judea. So let me walk you through kind of what's taking place in this time. I need to tell you who Herod was, okay? So verse 5, Herod was a nut job. I'm going to lay it out. Just an absolute lunatic. He has a party, and there was this high priest for the Jewish people, and this dude was good looking, and he was beginning to gain a lot of popularity with the Jews, but the problem was he was the brother-in-law of him. It was his wife's brother. And at a party, because this guy was like kind of always concerned someone's going to upsert his authority, at this party he takes this priest and he has a pool and he drowns the guy in front of everyone and kills him. His wife's not too happy about it, as you would think. And so she begins to press into him and he goes, you know what? I'm going to kill you too. By the end of Herod's reign, he has killed his wife, his brother-in-law, and at least 3 of his sons. He's a little lunatic, right? He gets to a point where this is a year after Christ's birth, historically, and you know the story of Christ's birth. He hears that there's going to be a king that was born, and he had all the babies in Bethlehem slaughtered. This is historic. But before he dies, 5 days before he dies, he knows he's going to die. So he takes all the noble people in the city, all the people of popularity, he has them thrown in prison, and he literally signs an edict, when I die, I want you to slaughter all of them so that there's weeping in the city. That's how egotistical he is. So you think we live in a hard political season now, right? You're like, what's going on politically? Imagine this nut job as your main dude. Like, he's nuts. And so you get an idea of how awful culture is at this time. At any moment, this guy could turn on you and your life is taken. So in the day of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah. So let me walk you through kind of who Zechariah is and why this is important. Some of your version just says another priest. It's this idea that he's not much. He's just a normal priest. He's just a normal pastor. And when you look at the Jewish culture at that time, they had over 16,000 priests. 16,000. He's just a normal guy. But God takes this normal guy and look at the story behind it. No particular notability. Nothing significant about this guy. But it says this. And he had a wife from the daughter of Aaron, which is another priest. And her name was Elizabeth. So, Zechariah, the priesthood was so important to him that he married a woman who understood what being a priest was like. So he went and got a pastor's daughter, right? She'll understand. She's committed to this. But look how it describes this. This is a really cool description that takes place. And they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. So the Bible takes a moment and says this about them, like there's nothing special about these two. But they loved God. This word righteous means made right before God. You get that? And so, how? Christ hasn't died yet. How was Zechariah and his wife made righteous before God? So even in the Old Testament, what we see is that faith alone saves you. Nothing has changed when we shift into the New Testament. And so what Zechariah understood more than anybody is year after year, he would sit in the temple and he would slaughter sheep over and over for the sins of humanity. And it was an habitual thing that he did year and year. He knew it was broken. He knew that, hey, like this doesn't cure the sin that is happening in our culture. This doesn't appease God's wrath. He understood that he couldn't keep the law, not every ounce of the law, that he had broken it, and that before God he wasn't holy. And so he would constantly be making sacrifices. He knew the system was broken, but he also knew Isaiah 53 that he needed a Savior, and that one day someone, God's Son, would come and bear the consequence of his and all of his people and the entire world's sin. And so he placed his hope, his faith, in the coming of the Messiah, just like us. And he was made righteous because of his faith, because of where he placed his hope. But it says more here than just that. He did everything he could to walk with God. But look at verse 7. But they had no child. So a place where there's no hope, because Elizabeth was barren and both were advanced in years. I think it's hilarious how this phrases it. It doesn't call Elizabeth old. It just says, you're kind of seasoned, sweetheart, right? But there's this moment in this story that you read where Zechariah had made these pleas with God. God, can my wife just have a kid? Like, this is the most hopeless moment of a young woman's life. Like, she wants a baby so much. She's married to a great guy, but they can't have children. And she has this deep down desire to be a mom, but she can't. And only the hand of God, and this is the miracle of birth, only the hand of God can make that happen. The complexity of having a child is great, right? And she would plead with God, and there's a point here where it's saying they couldn't have children. It's this hopeless situation. But look what it goes on. It just makes that statement there, and this is going to play out in the story. Now, while he was serving as priest before God, when his division was on duty, according to the customs of the priesthood, he was chosen by a lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. What would take place is there would be divisions that would go and serve in the temple in Jerusalem. And they'd be called, and so they would show up to Jerusalem, and they would be part of the sacrificial system, but they would draw these lots, and only once in your priesthood were you able to go into the holy place of the temple. Only once. And he drew a lot, and for Zechariah, he draws it, and this is the pinnacle of his priesthood. I get to go into the holy place of God, not the Holy of Holies, but I get to go into this holy place of God where it's the closest place to where God dwells on the human earth. And this was like the pinnacle of his priesthood. He would have told all of his family, like, hey, dude, like, this is awesome. This is his Super Bowl, right? And so he comes into this moment where it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he gets to go in the holy place, and he gets to burn incense into that holy place. And look how it describes this. And the whole multitude of people were praying outside the hour of incense. And so all these people are praying. And Zechariah does this. He walks and moves the curtain and goes into the holy place of God. And they were told, do your business and get out. Don't sit there. Like if you blaspheme God, if you mess with God, he will literally strike you dead. They would have bells on their robes and they would have ropes tied to their ankle, because if something happened, they could pull out the dead body if they upset God. Like they took this very seriously. So I can picture this man just walking in being like, oh man, I hope everything's right with God. Right? God, please forgive me, and walks in. And all of a sudden before his eyes, there's just something he's never seen. The holy place of God. These things that he's read about. And what he would go before he would do in there, he would go to where they burnt their offerings, their animal offerings for the sacrifice of their sins. And he would grab the coals and he would carry this gold bowl into the holy place, and he would go to the altar of incense and he would drop the coals there. And I don't know if you've ever been into Orthodox church or anything like that, but all of a sudden what would take place is the incense would rise and the smoke would rise on the other side of this curtain, and it would fill the temple with this beautiful smell. And it was to signify that God hears the prayers of his people, that our prayers are an offering. So all these prayers that these people are praying, prayers of forgiveness, thanksgiving, of reconciliation, whatever they may, petitions, God, please let this happen. It's a symbol that it raises to the nose of God, and how sweet are the smell of the sacrifice of his people. It's a beautiful symbol. But when he's in there, look what takes place. And there appeared to him an angel of the Lord standing on the right side of the altar of incense. Guys, this didn't happen. This doesn't happen. You can tell me an angel has shown up to you, and in my mind I'm going to be like, I'm not sure about that. This is not normal. God invades human history in this moment. Let me walk you through why this is 800 years since the time of the last miracle. 800 years since Israel has experienced any type of miracle. 500 years since Jesus showed up in the fiery furnace with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. 400 years, no prophet has spoken. And God intervenes with this common priest. And this man knows the Old Testament accounts of angels. And he's standing there like, oh, dude, I'm done. He understands that angels are normally angels of judgment. They're not of good news. And what happens in this moment, he just freezes. And Zechariah was troubled, like, oh my goodness. When he saw him, fear fell upon him like, oh. And I'm not sure if he started backpedaling. I'm not sure what he did, but he froze. And this is the common response. And this is what bothers me a lot about when we pray to God, when we engage in worship. The common response of God's holiness is complete terror. John in chapter 1 says he sees a vision of heaven's throne room. He sees a vision of God, and he falls on his face and he plays dead. He's a possum. Right? Because why? The fear of judgment has set into Zacharias. He's like, oh man, I know what I am. I know what I've done. I know all my mistakes. And now I'm standing before a holy being. And done. This is just beautiful. He was troubled, but the angel said to him, don't be afraid, Zechariah. Okay, all right, dude. Like, have you seen yourself? And the angel saying, like, I'm not coming to judge you. I'm coming for a blessing. I'm coming to bless you. And this is where the meat of the passage is. Zechariah, your prayers have been heard. And your wife, Elizabeth, she's going to have a son. What? Like, seriously? There's no way. And this terminology in the Greek regarding these prayers have been heard, it means this long-seated prayer, like this continual, habitual, for years of prayer. So I want you to picture this. I really do, because it's described this previously, and I've led you up to this. Zechariah is old at this point, and his wife is old. Seasoned, sorry. And from their 20s or their teenage years, since God brought them together, they've been praying for one thing and one thing only, a child. And they're not 40 here, most likely. They're 60, 70. Yeah. And the average lifespan of that age was 33, so this is old. They're 60 or 70. The wound's closed, right? It's closed. For 40 years. 50 years, they've been praying to God for something. And nothing. I mean, just at the dinner table. Elizabeth, I know you're struggling. Let's just talk to God. He's faithful. I know He's faithful. The women, they're walking around their village with their kids, and it's just, she doesn't have any. It weighs on her. Like, I just want just one child. I don't want 4 little rugrat boys. I just want one, right? The tears. The mornings where it's like, well, he has his place in society. He goes and does his priestly duties, but like first century women, what am I to do? God heard you for the 40, the 50 years of your pleading. He heard you. And right now, in this moment, He is going to answer your prayer. A prayer that you probably stopped praying. A prayer that you forgot about. A prayer that you may not even think is even remotely a possibility anymore. Like, He heard you. And in this lack of fanfare, where no one's around other than this common priest, God shows up in the gospel records in this amazing moment. He goes, I'm not only answering your prayers, I'm answering the prayers of hundreds of thousands of people who have pleaded for God to show up. And who are exhausted and tired about what's happening in the world. Who are exhausted and tired about the illnesses, the depravity of the priesthood, the wayward way of even those people who claim that they're followers of God. All these people, I'm going to show up, and it's not going to just be rejoicing for you and your wife. It's going to be rejoicing for this entire nation. You have no idea of the significance of what's about to happen. And you shall call his name John. And I love this term. If your name John, if you don't know what your name means, it means God is gracious. And this is what he's saying. Through your son, Zechariah, God is going to be gracious to all humanity. He's going to show grace. Something they don't deserve, but they're going to receive, and it's going to be a free gift. And look at what he proclaims his son's going to do. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great before the Lord. That term, and when you navigate through the significance of John, when you look at Luke 7, Jesus says He is the greatest man who was ever born from a woman. 15 minutes of fame. You don't know about John the Baptist. He's out in the desert eating locusts. Like just a weird guy calling people to repentance. And at a party, one king thinks, hey, I like the way this girl looks. One request, I want John the Baptist's head. He sends messengers. This is John the Baptist's story. Sends messengers back to Jesus because even in that moment he has doubt. Are you sure you're the Messiah? And tell him I'm the one. And he dies. That's John the Baptist. 15 minutes of fame. But he's greater than Abraham, Moses, Noah, Elijah, who went literally on a chariot of fire. Like you lay it down. John the Baptist prepared the way for Jesus Christ. He proclaimed from the desert, the Messiah is here. Walk through the significance of this. And you must not drink wine. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even in his mother's wombs. The dude's preaching while he's in his mom's womb. Like he's filled with the Spirit. Like he's up there doing the celebration dance, right? And he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God. He's going to preach and people are going to say, I need God. I need to turn my life around to God. It doesn't stop there. He will go before him in the spirit and the power of Elijah to turn the hearers of the fathers to the children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just and make ready for the Lord's people to prepare. He is going to bring families back together because restoration is going to happen. Because that's what happens in the gospel. When God gets a hold of your heart, it's not about you anymore. It's just going to change everything. We're a product of John the Baptist's ministry. And Zechariah said to the angel, how shall I know this? What? You lost your mind, dude. Like, I need more than just an angel showing up to me. For I'm an old man. And look how he describes his wife. And my wife is advanced in years. I'm old. She's farther along than I am, dude. Like, how is this possibly going to be? That question is actually one of contention. He's saying, like, hey, dude, there's no way. The Greek construction reveals it's not curiosity, it's skepticism. There's no way. And I love the angel's response here. And the angel answered him, I'm Gabriel. Bro, look at me. I'm Gabriel. You've read the book of Daniel? You know all those prophecies Daniel wrote about? I'm the dude who gave them to him. You know what it means, Gabriel? God's power. Oh, okay. Like, so I'm looking at this dude. He is not something that you're just going to blink your eyes about. He's like, I need more proof. This dude has lost all hope. You get that? 40 years I've been praying. An angel shows up. I'm going to do it. It's not enough. It's not enough. Abraham, same situation. Like some of us have lost hope so deeply. It doesn't matter if Shekinah glory opened up right above this roof and God says, I'm here. You're still not going to believe. That's what breaks my heart. I've been there, church. I've been literally walking in a miracle. God showing up time and time again in my life. And I'm like, hey, bro, I don't believe. I don't think you can do this next thing. Like, it's cool you did that, but this? Nah. You can't do it. It's sad. It's sad when we lose hope. It's sad when we walk in a posture of, God, I hear your words. I've seen your works. I just don't think so. And he says this, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. Like, dude, I'm Gabriel. Like, I just came from God. I was just with him. He sent me down here. And I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. I think about this one verse right here. The only experience I had with God is my salvation. The moment he grabbed a hold of my heart, the moment he bowed my knee, the moment where heaven met me in my wretchedness and in my sin, it's enough for me. It's good news. And behold, you will be silent and unable to speak until the day that these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time. God said, Zechariah, you spoke too much. You talk too much. I'm not going to let you talk anymore. For 9 months, you're going to watch me work. And you're not going to be able to say a word. I'm going to make you sit in silence. Not because I'm mad at you, because I'm merciful. You know what sometimes hopelessness needs? For you to shut your mouth. And sit in the presence of God. And so there's these times. Man, I'm being serious, guys. There's these times where you know God can do it. Like, you just know it. But you talk yourself out of it. Like, there's no way that's too much money, or I've fractured that relationship too deeply, or the doctor said this, and you could go down the line. Like it's been 30 years and my wife hasn't changed, and you can go down the line. And you'll reason with yourself, and God just says, be faithful. Trust me. And you just talk. You just run your yapper. And this is merciful. Zechariah had his mouth shut. He walks out and he can't talk. And they're like, bro, this guy doesn't ever shut up. God must have shown up in that room. I mean, that's literally a text. It doesn't say that he talks too much, but it just says that they saw that God done, he had a vision. That's the point. God showed up, and for 9 months, he watched God work. So let me walk you. Hope requires silence when doubt is loud. You get that? Sometimes you just need to be quiet when the doubt overwhelms you. And you just need to sit in the presence of God. Let me walk you through an illustration that I think will hammer this home. In 1952, there was a long-distance swimmer called Florence Chadwick. And she wanted to do something incredible. She wanted to swim from the Catalina Islands to the coast of California, which was 26 miles in frigid temperatures. She would have broke a world record in shark-infested waters. So she gets in a boat, and they take her out to the Catalina Islands, and she begins to swim, and thick fog begins to settle over the ocean. She couldn't barely see anything, not even the boat that was next to her. As she swam, she's 15 hours into the swim, and her arms are growing numb, her lungs are burning, and her mom sits beside her because she can tell she's getting weak, and says, babes, I believe in you. You can do it. Don't quit. In those 15 hours at the end, she got exhausted and disoriented. And she was unable to see anything in the horizon because the fog was so thick. And she screamed out to the boat, take me out. I'm done. When she's pulled out of the water, after a few seconds, the fog lifts up and she realizes she was less than a quarter mile from shore. And she said with haunting words later, I didn't fail because I was tired. I failed because I couldn't see the shore. You know what I'm talking about. There are situations in life where the fog is so thick, the darkness is so great, you can't see God. You can't see him. You have no understanding how God is going to fix this mess. And in this illustration, what I think is the key to it all is instead of allowing God to encourage you and hold your hand, we're just paddling. I'm going to do it my way. Instead of just looking up, hey, am I almost there? We're just grunting. We're putting all our energy. We're like suffocating ourselves. And God's saying like, my yoke is what? Easy and light. But when we do it our way, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, when you keep your hands on the wheel and you don't abide by the 66 books and do it God's way, it's tough. And so there are seasons when the fog rolls in, right? It's too dark. Maybe it's a loss of a loved one. It's an unanswered prayer. It's fear and anxiety. It's confusion. Like, God, like, I thought you promised me good. I can't see you in this. Maybe you don't feel him. And something inside of you is quietly saying, I don't know if I can keep going. I want you to think about this story in Zechariah. Decades of disappointment. Decades of prayer that never seemed to be answered. A story that felt like I'm stuck. Fog everywhere. And God finally speaks. Finally shows up. And he can't trust the promise. Nah. I need more proof. Why? Because he couldn't see the shore. He couldn't see what God was doing. He was unable to realize that God was about to bring the forerunner through his own genes and literally bring salvation to the entire world through Jesus Christ. And God in his mercy, he gave him a gift, silence. It wasn't a punishment. It was something that would heal Zechariah's heart. It was mercy. It was silence that would strip away his unbelief and taught him to trust what he couldn't see. A silence where hope could breathe again. Will you bow your head and close your eyes?